Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome to Leading with Light, where we talk about everything life and leadership, and we dig deep into aspects of leadership that are usually ignored. Last week, we had some real honest conversations about the shadow side, and it's those hidden patterns that we don't always see, but they are present and they quietly shape how we organize ourselves, how we live our lives, and how we lead. Those in patterns that make us unknowingly self-sabotage. And we want to talk about how we can transform those hidden patterns into purpose-driven influence. For those who don't know me, I am Dr. Marcia Thomas. I am a Christian leadership consultant and life purpose coach. And I really help Christian leaders, specifically females, to navigate burnout and to balance their life and their leadership, those aspects of their life, to translate into profitable and joyful callings. I also am a best-selling author, several books. I have another coming out very, very soon. In another 2 weeks, I'll be doing my launch, and that would be My Faith Looks Up. You'll see it on my screen. And I also help persons navigating their dissertation and their whether master's or doctoral to take it successfully to the end. And so that is the sum total of who I am. And so today we want to look at leading in the light, transforming hidden patterns into purpose-driven influence. Last week, we touched some key points. We actually spoke about how you can be gifted, hardworking, even highly successful, and still feel stuck, weary, or lost. Thank you for joining, Franklin. Thank you for joining, Simone. And thank you for joining, Heidi. Thank you so much for joining. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Yes, so as I said before, today we go a little deeper because it's not enough. Just last week we had an awareness, but it is not enough to see the shadows. We must learn how to walk in the light, because that's what we want to do today, walk in the light. And so together we want to explore how awareness turns into transformation and how purpose anchors us, and how to build relationships that keep us strong. Thank you so much for joining, Nick. And I am using two devices because there are some persons on the other device that I want to highlight today. Thank you so much for joining, Marlene. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining. All right. So we want to look at what our topic will be today. And I want to magnify my screen so that persons can follow. All right, so there we have it. So we want to make sure that I always start with a quote. Good. So we want to make sure that the quote is there. Purpose doesn't grow in the shadows. It flourishes when the light of truth and faith meets. And today we're going to show you how light and faith can meet. All right. So purpose doesn't grow in the shadows. It flourishes when the light of truth and faith meet. What am I going to be pulling forward? What are the talking points today? One of the talking points is how to move from simply recognizing your shadow side to actually transforming it into a strength. And then I want to give some practical faith-centered strategies to break free from those hidden patterns and lead with alignment, clarity, and courage. Because weariness, being burnt out, being lost, feeling helpless, and feeling unfulfilled are not great points. Those points can fester and become points that pull you deep down and make your shadow becomes the prominent part of you. Remember that last week we said that leaders have a shadow side and they also have a light. Sometimes the shadow overpowers the light, but the light must always stand out. And so there are some illusions of safety that leaders have. And I want to ask today, what would shift in your leadership if the very patterns that once drained you become the lessons that deepen you? What if? What would shift? The patterns that you're allowed to drain you, you begin to reframe them into lessons that deepen you. Because that's what patterns and routines do. Some can drain you and some can make you very successful. Those that drain you are those patterns that we say are hidden, but they come from trauma, they come from your experiences that you hold on to. It comes from the residue of betrayal, it comes from juggling too many things all at once that pull and that makes you carry an emotional overload. And when you're not able to recognize those and handle them, navigate them, create your coping mechanisms, eliminate those things that you need to eliminate, they can become very burdensome, invisible weights that drag you down and make you feel out of your depth, overwhelmed, burnt out, weary, lost, angry, bitter. All of those things can rise to the surface when you're not at a good place, and can actually affect and sabotage your life and your leadership. Now, I want to put it on the premise that many are the plans in a man's heart, because of course, I'm a Christian leadership coach, and I believe that every one of us is born with a purpose, and that purpose is established by God. You can derail your purpose. You can put your purpose into dormancy. You can be so engaged and great and good at your role and still not fulfill your purpose, but your purpose is still there. And of course, I say that is why so many persons, significant enough, tell you what they would do if they had their lives to live over. Welcome, welcome, Dr. Leslie. Good to have you. So many are the plans in a man's heart, but it's the Lord's purpose that prevails. And Proverbs 19:21 says that very well, and many persons understand. So my core focus points today will be awareness to action. That's one of the strategies that I want to put out there. The purpose, the power of purpose alignment. I want to talk about the strategic relationships that heal and strengthen. And I want us to walk in the light. How do we do that and do it daily? So I would be looking at some of those points. The first one I want to look at is awareness to action. And I say that awareness is a powerful, very powerful tool. It's a great thing, but it is powerless if we just stop there. Awareness needs action. Because if we stop at awareness, we are actually diagnosing the issue without pursuing healing. And also, it's like putting on a band-aid on a cut, but we are not stopping the bleeding. And that's the difference. That's the difference. Awareness is just the first step, and it's a very powerful step because it can ignite change. It can move into transformation. And transformation is where the rubber hits the road because it requires intentional shifts, very intentional shifts. It's about consistent action, choosing to align with God's truth, replacing your fear with faith. And it is also making decisions that honor you and your calling and also honor God. Now, how do you replace sabotage with purposeful choices? Because the question that I really want us to answer as we speak right now is that, now that I've seen my shadow side, how do I change it? And so we come to the replacing, the intentional shifts. And so we come to the replacing. How do you replace self-sabotage with purposeful choices? First of all, you have to believe in yourself, in your mind, and in the plan that God has for you. And so you want to speak over your mind and your emotions and your thoughts and your heart. First of all, you want to speak over that part of you. First of all, you want to speak over your mind, your thoughts, your emotions. And I see your point there, Dr. Leslie. And in the end, if we never have dedicated ourselves to our purpose, you are forgiven. Yes, you just would have lived an unfulfilling life. It would have maybe been something that you tolerated, something that made you feel comfortable, something in which you did produce, but deep down in your heart, you have that longing for something a little greater. And so that's where it is. So the action, pick a goal that motivates us into action. That's where I'm going. So you want to, first of all, speak over your emotions, your mind, your thoughts, and so on. And then you want to let peace and clarity and wisdom flood your soul through these actions. How do you do that? You want to remove fear. You want to remove anxiety. You want to remove doubt. You also want to walk in faith, and you want to trust your decisions, because you would have done that properly through praying for discernment and wisdom and the divine strategy that you need in everything that you do. And so you want to become transformed by renewing your mind, and that is in Romans. So you're transformed by renewing your mind. You nurture and you nourish your mind so that your mind can propel you to take the right action, because it is very clear. And so you're able to discern, you're able to hear from God, you're able to pinpoint your divine life script, your path, and the things that would make you who you ought to be. So we want to understand it like that. And I want to say great and good for those who are coming on now. I appreciate you. I appreciate the efforts you're making. And I thank you very much. Please be reminded that you can always contribute to the discussion. Take your points, because none of us know everything, and we're in a community where it's a conversation. Do we replace or change, or are we really creating fresh new faith in our ability and deservability and deservability? Do we replace or change? That's a very great question, Dr. Leslie. Do we replace or change? I think we actually do both. We replace those things, those beliefs, those thoughts, those, what would I call it now? Those habits that we have learned, we unlearn them, we learn new ones, and we actually unlearn those that are not beneficial to us, and that doesn't take us anywhere. There are some times now when we have to do a full change comes as we mature. Our ambitions change, when because of age, because of our placement, because of our circumstances. We have to change how we live our lives. We have to adjust when there's a great illness, much more than just replacing or pivoting into something. So change in itself sometimes is brought onto us unwittingly by default, and must be quick and swift. And then change can also be gradual. Gradual in the sense that we get an opportunity to change on our own terms and to transform at our own pace. So while we change, there are things that we replace. When those things are replaced or eliminated, completely eradicated or discarded, and new things coming to being, then change in itself is more lasting. And we are also creating fresh new faith in our abilities as we succeed, as we become good at it, as we reap the results, as we see ourselves moving closer to our desired goal, then faith remains a constant, because we have a foundation and we have a resting place, faith. And so that's where it is. All right. So the next one I want to look on is the power of purpose alignment. So the first, one was that we are aware and we turn that awareness into action, meaningful, profitable, beneficial action. And the next one is our purpose, the power of purpose alignment. You ask yourself the question, am I leading from my true calling or from fear and pressure? And as I wrap up this series on how we self-sabotage, the hidden patterns, the invisible weights, and so on, I want us to now dig down into making that change, because that is my mantra, that is my role, that is my purpose as a coach, to make you find the answers inside of you and pull out those actions that will take you closer to your goal, that will influence this transformation that you want and the end results and the desired outcomes, that will actually give you peace and joy and make you profit, because profit is not just monetary. All right. So we want to look at the fact that fear driven leadership, whether in your relationships, personal and professional, breeds burnout and disillusion. When there is no trust, there is a lot of fear, anxiety, and of doubt, of accusation. A lot of those rest in the form of what persons think is jealousy, but it's really the uncertainty that is driving persons crazy and making them think all sorts of things. And it happens to leaders too. Too often, there are many leaders who confuse business with purpose. And it's just because they are leading out of fear of criticism, of judgment, fear of failure, and also fear of success. We have to be guarded on that. So they are busy with their purpose, and they are performing and they are producing, and they confuse this business with purpose, because business without alignment is just noise and movement. They don't recognize that it is a misalignment. But I want to say business without alignment is just noise and movement. Yes, Dr. Leslie, we don't want them as part of our rich history and choice of lessons learned. Yes, those things that don't, the things that don't make us grow or add value to our lives should not be held on to. The things that change us and make us uncomfortable and make us angry or pull at our passions do more good for us and has more lessons. And that's why failure is so feared, and success is also so feared, because the adrenaline for both is really the same. Faith also requires a great deal of courage and a great deal of believing and a great deal of manifestation. And many persons, the journey to get there and the waiting, between the waiting and the hoping, can become very overwhelming, and they can lose a handle on themselves, on many things. And that's really the thing about it. And so, thank you for that point, Tanique. Business is not leading out of purpose. It's really leading out of fear. The fear of failure, the fear of judgment, of criticism, also the fear of poverty. And those things, we looked at it, Dr. Leslie and myself looked at it about 2 seasons ago, 2 sessions ago, and how it manifests itself and how it can sabotage you, make you self-sabotage. So we want to look at it. Purpose is what anchors you when these shadows try to pull you off course. The shadows that we highlight, those hidden things, the drama, the pain, the betrayal, the fear of judgment, of criticism, those fears that sometimes manifest themselves into negative self-talk and the perfectionism and the overlying dependence on external validation. All of those come together as the shadows that try to pull you off course. So many leaders I've coached, and I need to speak from my experience, because there are of course exceptions to every rule, but the leaders that I have coached, they realized that they weren't really tired because of hard work, because of the deadlines and so on. They were just tired because of a misalignment. And the moment they clinched down into that misalignment, they were able to do much better. The moment, and many of them are Christian leaders, most. I have had a few that are not Christian leaders, but they believed in the free model. The word free gives them, or relief, gives them some, attracts them in some way. So they do come to me. But I have the text that I use a lot in my own experience and as I coach. Many are the plans in a man's heart, but it's God's purpose that prevail. And sometimes a lot of us comes up to walls or doors that are slammed shut. There is nothing that we can do to nudge those doors open. Nothing. No amount of thinking can make we nudge those doors open, whether positive or negative. And so while we are there pushing at that door, that will not open. There are several that opens around us. And in the end, we find ourselves, even after delaying or derailing, coming to the realization that this is what I was created to do. This is what I was born to solve. This is what gives me such joy. This is what I'm really good at and not what I'm pursuing. And that changes it for a lot of persons, and they begin to align their decisions with their God-given calling or purpose, because they find that what they are doing naturally is done while they are in the role that they are carrying out. So the power of purpose alignment reeks of joy, fulfillment. It comes naturally. It's something that you're great at, and it's something that you love to do. So you might just be sitting in an office at the front desk there, but you'll find that those in your team that benefits from you mostly are those who need to change their mindset. So every time they come, you'll find yourself talking to them in ways that affirm change from the mindset, but you're in the role. And it doesn't mean that it doesn't carry you to do other things and you're not good at that and you're not achieving. That's not what it means. It means that you are touching people's life in the position that you have been placed, not arbitrarily, because nothing happens by accident. And even if you think you got there by default, even if it is one, you're there to change the mindset of one, because in changing the mindset of one, you are changing an entire generation. And that's the thing. Can we really be effective if we're living in fear of criticism? I don't think that we can be truly effective. What I think is that it depends on your perspective of criticism. There are persons who appear oblivious to criticism. But what I say to people is take the truth from what is being said and work on that change, that part of it that is true, and ignore what's not true. And that's it, Tanique. We judge ourselves even more than others judge us, and our own thoughts imprison us and leads us to burnout as well. Very much so. Very brilliant point. I want to put it right where I want to display it a lot. So because we judge ourselves, the self-criticism is what sabotages us, because awareness requires critically looking at the truth about ourselves, looking in the mirror. Awareness requires you to do that. And in that awareness, you can become highly sensitive to who you have become that is undesirable. But it should lend itself to push you out of that frame that you suddenly understand that you have become or found yourself in, and propel you to go to who you desire to be. In that way, that's, for me, is accountability in its highest form, because sometimes we deny the truth about ourselves and we project who we are on other persons, and we treat other persons the way we think based on our projection. That's not good enough. But Narcissists do that and do that very well. Project who they are and what they're doing to other persons. And that is why when you're in a narcissistic relationship, it can be fortified stuff in your spirit that require therapy for you to get rid of, because your mind, it becomes trained, and your emotions and thoughts become cultured to serve and to please and to compromise and to come to a consensus with that person so that you can be at peace, just to have some peace, or just to get that approval, or just to get that love, or to avoid the harsh criticisms that narcissists dish out, and the blame game that they play, and the victims that the devils that they make you believe that you are. And why am I stressing this? Because leaders, they are narcissistic leaders who push and drill down into team members in such a way that they not only become burnt out, but they become so disillusioned, and they lack so much trust in themselves, because they become such great judge of themselves that they no longer perform. They no longer believes in them, in their self-worth. They no longer feel that they can make decisions, so they double check, and they are become very fearful, extremely fearful of failure. And these persons are leaders. Many are leaders who are doing that very same thing. And there are many persons who have parents who do the very same thing, friends who do the very same thing, because it's like narcissism or narcissistic persons or circles kind of put you in an addiction. It's as if you become addicted to them, because they take over your mind and your spirit by what they say and their expectations on what they do. And they are usually persons that you greatly admire or love. Very, very important. Dr. Leslie, thank you so much. You're not attached to the concepts you share. It's quite extraordinary in my experience. Thank you so much. All right, so this is something that is part of my very own vision mission, impacting one life at a time. Very good, Tani. When you impact one, that one can go and impact 100 or 1,000. So you must always impact one. And that's the thing about purpose. Purpose impacts one. Purpose. You are born to do anything, but you are not created to do everything, and you are not created to show. You are not created to solve everybody's problem. You are sent. And that's the thing about God. Your purpose aligns you to find your niche, and those you solve the problems you are created to solve for those persons that you are created to solve, and in the way that you are created to solve, because your unique gifts and talents must be used to carry out that mission. So the next thing I want to talk about is the strategic relationships that heal and strengthen you. So the question I want you to ask yourself as you begin to wrap up, as you begin to control the shadows, as you begin to look at what imprisons you and how you are judging yourself and your expectations, your core values, how they are playing out, who it is that you want this validation from, do you believe in yourself enough, is who is walking with me as I grow. That's the next thing that you want to ask yourself. Who is walking with me as I grow? Because in one of the sessions, we have looked carefully at that fact that you need strategic relationships. And those strategic relationships, as we said before, are those relationships that stretch you and grow you and supports you and builds you. We want to make sure that we understand that when we talk about strategic relationships, that's what we are talking about. And so who is walking with you as you grow? Because isolation in itself feeds shadow patterns. You can't, no man is an island. No man stands alone. Each man's joy must be joy to you, and each man's grief is your own. We need one another so we can defend each one as a brother and each one as your friend. That is the thing. Isolation feeds the shadows and feed your passions. Healthy accountability breaks those cycles. You must have persons who can tell you the truth in love, who can stretch you, who can help you to grow, who can build you up. And leadership can feel lonely but it doesn't have to be isolating. So you don't have to become personal friends and buddy and secret partners to any team member. That's not what we're saying. What we're saying is you must have your strategic relationships that you can go to for healing and for strength. And these persons must be truth tellers. They must be mentors. They must be encouragers. Truth tellers is a very big thing for me, because we are code creators. When we touch someone's life, they are also being touched by God. Let me show that. And that's part of what I am leading to here in relation to surrounding yourself with truth tellers, your mentors, and your encouragers. That is so, so classic and profound, Dr. Leslie. We are code creators. I believe that with all my heart. And there, and I have a session coming up where we're gonna talk about this very same thing. What do we mean? Why are leaders code creators, leaders in your home, in the community, in your profession? And how do we identify them as code creators? I'm putting it out, Dr. Leslie, that you will have to join me with that. I hope you can. I'll soon give you the details. We want to look at leadership as code creators and what the codes are. And I am building this out of a book that I'm actually working on. I'm always working on a book. I like to write my thoughts that talks about the leadership seeds. And I present leaders as code creators. When we touch someone's life, they're also being touched by God. Very much so. Leaders leave seeds. And if you're a great leader, you build persons, you make them become masters of their own destiny, you make them test themselves to see what they can produce. If you're a poor leader, no matter what your achievements are and your accomplishments, no matter how many deadlines you have actually met, if you make persons become followers and keep them glued to doing what you say they must do and to accomplish what you want them to accomplish, then you are not a leader. And we want to make sure that we understand the codes that we set. So we want to understand that the shadow, whatever it is, strives in secrecy. But accountability is where the light is. Accountability. And that's why strategic relationships that heal and strengthen are very good. That's why when we touch lives, they also become touched by God. And if we understand it, and how it is aligned and integrated into our purpose, then our reflections, our actions, our words, our behavior, our movement changes, very much changes, and become have an eternal impact, because we are preparing persons for this life and for the life to come. We look for in others what we either love or dislike about ourselves. Very much so. Very much so. Very much so. And we are attracted to persons, generally speaking in life, many persons don't know that are really opposites. We think we are attracted to persons who are like-minded like us, but we are really attracted to opposites who are on our purpose path. So persons might be opposite to us. You might find that the beliefs are the same. The mission of service is the same. What is really different is the role. And all successful leaders in the Bible have strategic partners who support their own leadership journey. And that was my next point, Tanik. I'm so happy that this is resonating in a point where the very point is made in exactly the same way that I want to make it. And I wanted to talk about Deborah. And she became the only female priestess or leader in Israel, and she kept them in peace for 40 years. It shows that leadership is not solo. She shared it. Leadership in itself that is effective is not solo. It is shared. It is wise. It is courageous. And it builds relationship that calls out your best self. And that's what happened to Deborah. It also happened to Moses. He brought Aaron, then he brought along other persons. He You have also Jethro, and he divided the roles, and he found persons that were honest, persons that had a good character, and persons who were courageous and resilient. And he put that team together. When we look at those, Solomon in himself, despite his many concubines and wives, had wise counselors, and he also had persons who were in fact courageous. And he was said to be the wisest man on earth also. And so we have to understand the importance of strategic relationships. They are not relationships that because you are popular, and they are not relationships because you are outstanding. They are relationships that involve persons who tell you the truth and who are always there for you, who support you even when you're at your lowest ebb, even when you're wrong. They find the good parts and they nurture those good parts in you and in themselves. And they mentor you, and you are encouraged while you're being reprimanded or rebuked, because that's part of a strategic relationships where persons tell you when you are wrong. And that's just the thing about it. And God himself says it, that we are really to make children know when they are wrong. We are not to spare the rod and spoil the child. So we see ourselves as individuals in that setting where we come together with groups of persons that heal us and has grace in our room when we are beating down ourselves, when we are judging ourselves, when we are so ashamed, when we are so fearful, when we are so discouraged, when we are hurting, when we are broken, and when we feel like giving up. We must have persons who can peel through that darkness and peel away all of that hurt and so on, and get us to start believing in ourselves, reconnecting to our voice, reconnecting to our ambition, reconnecting to our purpose. And those, a lot of you have acquaintances and friends, there are a dime a dozen. But when it comes down to the nitty gritty, it's very hard to find these strategic relationships, even in your family sometimes, that heal and strengthen, and that is there for you. Very hard. And leaders rarely find themselves at a great deficit when it comes to that. Persons, they are afraid to be vulnerable because you don't, the push and the pressure to achieve and to have it all together and to actually know what you're about is so strong that a lot of leaders are suffering in silence. I help those leaders to pull out of themselves who they really are, to connect to their purpose, their voice, and their calling, and make it profitable enough to become a joyful work. Some wants to remain in their role, but they want to be able to find themselves right there and to step into their purpose there. I help those who want to transition out into a brilliant business idea. I help those. I have clients who have started their business and are expanding and moving. And the thing I love is that they carry me along, in the sense they let me know what is happening, the changes they are making, and how they are building on the foundation of the model that they have been introduced to, and how they are expanding it, and what is working and what they're adjusting to suit themselves. And that is helping me to refine my program also. And I have leaders who feel that in the end of their life they are retired, and they just feel that there is something that they need to fulfill. I bring them into the realization of what it is, what is hidden, what is to be fleshed out. Of course, there are strategies that you use to get there, and there are many who are starting to go on that part of joy. Some want to volunteer, some want to use their funds, and I like that very much, because it makes you what you're doing worthwhile, and it makes you know that this is also your purpose and also your calling. Thanks for joining, Charito. So great to have you. You're an inspiration also, a very powerful inspiration. All right. So I want to keep that on screen a little, because I want us to understand what co-creation means. Then I want to look at the last one, which is walking in light daily. How do I remain consistent, or how do I stay consistent in leading from the light instead of the shadow. And remember, for those who are just joining, you can look back at the presentation, the session last week and the week before, where we say that every leader has a shadow and light, and every leader has a light. So how do I stay consistent in leading from light instead of shadows? And walking the light isn't a one-off time event. It's not a one-off event. It's a daily surrender. It's a daily reflection. It's a daily awareness. It's a daily push. It's a daily push. It is setting boundaries that protect your focus. It's making time to actively listen before you lead. And you have to do this consistently, because consistency means that it becomes a part of you because it is repeated over time. And here is the clincher: it gets a different positive result. The positivity is amplified each time you do it. The clarity is amplified each time you do it. The confidence is amplified each time you do it. And so I want to be clear about that, so we understand what, where, why walking in the light and consistent actions are paired. So we want to be sure. We want to be so sure about that. And I want it to sink in. I want it to sink in. All right? So walking in the light doesn't seem like there is any boundaries, but sometimes that no that you say is saying a positive and resounding yes to choosing to remain focused, to remain purposeful, remain intentional. All right? To build and establish that code that lends itself to resilience, that lends itself to tolerance, that lends itself to inclusion. And we have to understand that we need to understand the stems that pull from consistent, intentional, purposeful action. And I want to make the point, I have it here, that consistency matters more than intensity. The next thing that we need to do if we want to continue to walk in the light is to build rhythms of prayer, of reflection, and those rhythms of boundaries. Because everybody's boundaries is different. And I want to say that purposeful leadership is cultivated in the quiet, everyday moments, in the small things and habits that we form. And so we have to be careful of how we invite and water misalignment. If we walk in the light, 1 John 1 verse 7, I think it is. If we walk in the light as he is in the light, we have fellowship one with another. Very important. And so I go back to where I started. Many are the plans that we have, but it's God's purpose that prevails. So we have to keep surrounding, keep aligning, and keep trusting. Leadership in the light is not perfection, it's alignment. I see you, Tanik. I was doing my devotional a few days ago, and it was talking about perseverance in doing good. And so perseverance is not merely human effort, but is empowered by the Holy Spirit. Very much so. It takes a lot to persevere, especially when nothing is happening, especially when we are at our wits' end, when we have done everything from our side that is humanly possible, and sometimes more than humanly possible. We have gone all the way, but we still feel like we are at the edge. We still feel that for some reason things are not coming together. And so Perseverance is really a gem. It's a gold mine. Being able to persevere, which is also seen as resilience in many circles, because it's really, there's a song in Jamaica that we says, this on this strong survive. So your boundaries are sacred. That's what we're talking about. When we talk about leading the light, your boundaries become very sacred because it must make you remain your focus. Whatever boundaries you set is because it must lead to remaining focused, intentional, and purposeful. So you must learn to say no without guilt. So you can say yes to your divine alignment. That's the fact. And so let's look at our takeaways. We're working very well in time. Let's look at our takeaways. Awareness without action is incomplete, and I say that. No matter how many affirmations and declarations we make, they are just out there. Powerful, very, very powerful. But if we do not take action, it doesn't make any sense. Awareness needs action. Without action, it's incomplete. And purpose alignment is the key to resilience. When you know your why, you understand the journey towards your why. You take those destinations, even if there are detours, because we do, detours can be failures. It can be that you get misaligned because you get discouraged or you get weary or you get burnout and you need to pause or you need to pivot. That in itself, you always bounce back. You bounce right back because you keep your why in focus. And you do this through your strategic relationships that strengthen and heal you and build your leadership and support your leadership. We also have learned that consistency in the light requires daily surrender. Surrender to who we really are, an understanding of what triggers us and how we trigger others, the surrender to God's will, and also leaning on His understanding and surrendering our desires to be fulfilled by the purpose pull and the direction and the problems we are created to solve, that we find ourselves solving, that we love to do, and that we're very good at. And so that's where we are standing right there. And I want to give you this leadership challenge so that you can look at how you can identify and get rid of your shadow side. I want you to pause and take a courageous look inward. And you might want to do that now. Of course, I want to give you 2 minutes. You want to identify a shadow pattern that tends to show up in your leadership, whether it is perfectionism, overcommitting, avoiding hard conversations, or second guessing yourself. And I want you to write it down. I want you to just write it down. I want you to just write it down. Good. So you have thought about it and you have written it down. Ask yourself now, what is this shadow costing me, my team, and my purpose? And just be honest about your answer, because that's where real change begins with knowing what is out of line, who you are, what you want, and how you want to move towards getting it done. And so shadows leave a trail of fatigue. Just to give you a hint, anything that is draining your energy, anything that is making you leak, always leaving you fatigued or angry or bitter, helpless or doubtful, disconnected, or make you miss opportunities, is a shadow. Anything that triggers you, or on the other hand, pushes you as a leader to trigger persons. If you find that you're doing that, then you're leaking, and that is a shadow. So look at the trails that the shadow is leaving. Are you constantly fatigued? Do you feel disconnected right now? Do you feel that you have missed an opportunity? Are you always missing opportunities? Are you always thinking that God has answered, moving to the direction that you think He's pulling you on to discover that you did not listen hard enough? That's not where He was sending you. And you keep asking him and you keep expecting an answer, but for some reason he's silent. Look at those things and then choose an intentional action to begin transforming it into a strength. Whatever it is that is costing you your team or your purpose, you want to take an intentional action to transform it into a strength. It might mean that you set a boundary. It might mean that you have an authentic conversation with yourself or with others. It can mean that you begin to delegate the tasks that you have been micromanaging and holding on tightly. It means that you are now able gonna be trusting persons and giving them roles and responsibilities to see what they can produce. I'm talking about leadership in your home, in your community, in your profession, in your workplace. It means also that you are going to pause and you're going to step back a little. Good evening, Sudeshna. Thanks for joining. I hope I pronounced your name correctly. It means those things. So as you do that, understand that you are not alone. God says, my grace is sufficient for you, and my power is made perfect in your weakness. That's a promise that you want to keep in 2 Corinthians 12, verse 9. That is something that must propel you to move to do what it is that you want to do. So if today this conversation resonates with you, I want to encourage you to start living your purpose without apology. But don't do it alone. Reach out if you're having your doubts, if you feel that you're not connected, if there's this gap in you, this weariness, this uncertainty. They want to know, you want to hear God's voice, you want to move in the right direction, especially now in the climate, in the context of the uncertainty, the job layoffs, the high cost of living, and so on. You don't want to go out just merely living from hand to mouth and pushing on daily and just surviving. You want to get out of your survival mode into your thriving mode. Just reach out. DM purpose. And for those who want to start without feeling pressured, you just need to grab your free purpose alignment audit report. That report gives you a great idea of where you are on your journey and the steps that you can actually take to start moving in the right direction. It actually gives you that. So it makes you see where you are on your purpose and faith journey and how you need to move. You can find it on my profile. And if you do DM purpose, you can also receive the link. All right. If you feel like you want to move right now, take that plunge. Feel free, have your joy, have your peace that you deserve, that God created you to have. Then I would be love to work with you. Very delighted. I do group coaching and I also do our one-on-one. So you can just schedule, your soul sync strategy session for you or for your team. So we'll work together to realign your leadership, your calling, and your soul health for sustainable impact today and beyond. So I work with teams. I'm doing a very interesting team right now, very powerful. In the meantime, pre-order my new book, My Faith Looks Up, and look out for our title for our book launch. The pre-orders, those who want to pre-order, I have several on my list, and I thank you so much for sending the information. When I create my pre-order link, which is coming out sometime at the end of this week, I will actually put that link there. But I really want us to focus on our book launch and getting the book bought on that day, important date that I will give to you. Let's make it a bestseller. And I promise you, it is worth getting. All right. I want to thank all of those who came today, and I want you to remember that you are not just a leader, you're a vessel, you're a code creator, and your soul matters. God is not calling you to lead on fumes, He's calling you to lead on overflow. So have a blessed Self Care Tuesday and see you next week. I appreciate you. All those who have joined, thank you so much. Blessings to you, and may you have a great, profitable rest of this week. Thank you for joining us. Sudeshna, thank you Franklin, thank you. Simone, thank you. Haley and Heidi, thank you. Tanik, thank you. Lisa, Charito, Nick, Dr. Leslie, thank you so much. All of you who joined, I don't want to miss anyone. And thank you for your thoughts. Thank you for making the discussion what it has been. Lisa, thank you for joining. And thank you, Nicole. God bless you all. Bye for now. Until next week.